continue to reflect on the Harambee Prosperity Plan, and for that, I'm now joined by Likukela, who is an independent economist. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time to be here this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all the viewers. It's good to be here.
All right. Mr. Likukela, the Harambee Prosperity Plan 1 was released in 2016. So how does it differ from the Harambee Prosperity Plan 2 from a policy perspective?
Okay. I think maybe before we go into that, I must mention that the Harambee Prosperity Plan as a policy, I do believe and I think that it's one of the greatest contribution the great man of Namibia has made to humanity.
Okay.
I think the late president Harambee Prosperity Plan will go down in the history as one of the major contributing policy documents to make the lives of Namibians better. When you look at the Harambee Prosperity 1 and 2, from a distance, one can easily conclude that they are the same. But they are actually not the same, because Harambee Prosperity 1 really was a novel, was the first of its kind to be introduced into the policy space of Namibia. And because it was the first, there were so many issues that were really not perfectly in place. And therefore, when a review was done, having learned a number of lessons from what went right and what went wrong, Harambee Prosperity 2 actually became the masterpiece, because now it was built and developed based on the experiences. So the summary in terms of the difference is to say that Harambee Prosperity 2 is the better version of Harambee Prosperity 1. So that is from its technical point of view. Now, from the policy point of view, Harambee Prosperity 2 actually broadened the scope and deepened the intervention of Harambee Prosperity 1. Why am I saying so? I'm saying so because in as much as the 5 pillars remained the same, the scope of the objective was expanded. And why was they expanded? Because it was discovered after a review process that they need to be unpacked so that they become easy to apply and implement. And so in as much as the 5 pillars remains the same, the objective and the policy implementation and the way the strategy were designed in Harambee Prosperity 2, one can easily see that a lot of thinking went on to redesign the whole package and how it's supposed to be strategized and implemented.
All right.
So, for example, just as an example, if one looks at the issue of infrastructure development, in Harambee Prosperity 1, it was really just a ballpark vision of saying we need infrastructure development in water, energy, transport, etc., etc. But in Harambee Prosperity 2, it was very clear what it is that we want to do with transport. What is it that we want to do with energy? We want to enhance transport. We want to enhance energy security. We want to position Namibia as the transport and logistic hub. It becomes more clear in Harambee Prosperity 2 than it was in Harambee Prosperity 1.
So there's more detailed explanations in HPP 2.
Precisely.
All right.
The targets became more granular, more easy to isolate, and you are able to monitor and evaluate where the lacks and deficiencies are than it was in Harambee Prosperity 1.
All right. Now, before the HPP 1's implementation, there were existing documents such as the NDP. So from a policy perspective, how does the NDP 5, for example, then differ from the HPP 2?
Precisely, yeah, you are quite correct. And even Harambee Prosperity Plan 1 and 2, you must realize that it's a product of a cross-pollination of various other documents. If you look at Harambee Prosperity 1 and 2, where the pillars were designed, they reflect, it's a mirror reflection of SDGs, the Global Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is a mirror reflection of the Africa Agenda, Agenda 2063, and it really resembles the key message of Vision 2030. And so you realize that even Harambee Prosperity 1 and 2, in as much as the other one came first, it carries the same message, that of prosperity. Now, how does Harambee Prosperity 2 differ from NDP 5? Quite a huge difference. The target is the same, the aim is the same. They all speak about inclusive economic growth. They
Okay.
all talk about wealth, prosperity for all.
Where do
But
they differ then?
where they differ is that NDP 5 is an implementation mechanism of Vision 2030, a long-term vision for prosperity for all. So maybe I should mention to say that Vision 2030, when it was introduced, it was having an inbuilt mechanism to implement it through the NDPs. That is why you have NDP 1, NDP 2, NDP 3. All of this was to implement the Vision 2030. Now we were in NDP 5. That was to implement Vision 2030. And then comes Harambee. Now Harambee was to fast track the processes. What does that actually mean? It means that Harambee Prosperity 2 came in with a more refined focus. Very important was the prioritization. So, in as much as NDP 5 had all these major projects, all these major plans, Harambee Prosperity came to say, okay, amongst these, which are the low-hanging fruits? Which one can we target for faster and more impactful outcome? And that is when Harambee come in. And if you look at Harambee Prosperity 2, most of the projects that are in NDP 5 are there, but more refined and more prioritized. That is the only difference.
So what are you saying, that the two documents or the two policies are being used in conjunction?
You would say they are being used in conjunction because you cannot look at the other one without looking at the other one.
Yeah.
But the one that we can see the actual implementation is Harambee, because it has picked out a few projects that of priority from NDP 5. And so that is why the resemblance still looks like they are the same. But in terms of difference, it's really the prioritization, because the message remains the same.
Okay. Now, you've differentiated to us the difference between Harambee Prosperity 1 and 2. Having touched that, Harambee Prosperity 2 is also just a detailed explanation, or rather detailed set of criteria into how to achieve the goals that are listed within the document. But if we are looking at the HPP 1, what were some of the lessons learned from it that then helped develop the second version?
Yes, so you must understand that a policy document, any policy document, is a living document.
Yes.
And it is affected by what is happening around it. So you look at political environment, economic environment, social environment. All these changes affects the policy document, which is why it's very important that time and again it's reviewed, it's revised, it's realigned. And that is what happened with HPP 2. It was to really realign it to the current situations. Now, what are some of the lessons that were learned so that HPP 2 becomes better? If you look at all the review and monitoring and evaluation reports of HPP 1, they carry almost the same central message. The message is that if there were proper governance systems in place, HPP 1 would have achieved almost all its target. So what was the challenge there? The governance system that speak to the plan were not fully entrenched. Number two, there were areas where there were lack of competency. You find that a project in a plan is well defined, well designed, but then the implementer would lack in certain areas. That is competencies. And all of these things, when were evaluated, question was to say, how do we make competency not a problem in HPP2? You look at resources, the budget. Some of the projects in HPP1 were not implemented simply because of funds. Now in HPP2, like I said, the plan is more granular. It's to the letter. So if there is a project, for example, a green hydrogen related project, it would be costed to the letter. And so all of these things, because we realized that in HPP1, some of the projects couldn't take off the ground simply because of issues around the budget and resources. So in HPP2, we are saying each and every project will be costed to the letter so that we don't repeat the same mistake. So these are the three central themes of the evaluation report of HPP1, such that HPP2, they tried to make sure that this does not become the challenges again. And that is why HPP2 really looks a lot more livelier and more responsive to the issues than HPP1.
Yeah. What is your outlook on the progress of HPP2 in its implementation stage?
Yeah, I would really say that it's fair, and that because if it had been implemented before what Namibia and the whole world went through not so long ago, I think we would have seen a lot more better results.
Yeah.
But remember, HPP2 was implemented within the context of, number one, COVID, within the context of heightened geopolitical issues, within the heightened context of worsening climatic changes. All of these things made it very difficult for HPP2 to really show results. But if you compare it against any other policy that was implemented in an environment better than this, you would really say that HPP2 really brought Namibia much further than it was a few years ago. And also, the fact that we now understood the economic dynamics of the country, of course with the visionary leadership of the late, things were much more easier to put in place. Of course, we needed more time and more resources, but on a balance of scale, I would say HPP2 performed much better than most of the policies Namibia actually implemented.
All right. Having said that, you know, praising the HPP2, do you foresee an implementation of another policy after this?
Well, we have just been ushered into NDP6, which I believe that given the lessons of HPP1, HPP2, it will be a much better version of all the other NDPs.
Okay.
We do not really, it's too early to speak about the future of the Harambee as an initiative, but if what we have seen in the past, the reception, the way Harambee was received and domesticated, it will continue to play an important role in all future policies of this country. Why? Because of the way it was domesticated. The main difference with Harambee, with all other policies, is that it was brought to us and we owned it. It is for the first time in the history of policy making where citizens were given a chance to contribute through the town halls. Town
hall meetings.
Yes. It was to really say, this is our policy. What do you think? What do you have? Bring it. And so this spirit will continue even in the development of NDP6. Right now, as we speak, we have seen in the papers, the NDP6 teams is all over the country consulting. This is something that really would inform you that going forward, NDP6 and any other policy would really be based on informed situation on the ground because of these heightened consultations.
All right, I want us to move away perhaps from the aspect of the Harambee Prosperity Plan because we are running out of time for our conversation, and also just allow you to reflect on the man that was the late Dr. President Hage Geingob. Where were you the night that the news was released by President Nangolo Mbumba?
Well, sure. If I think about it, it was like yesterday. So it was on a Sunday when I woke up to go to my garden. I have this custom of looking at my phone. So I looked at my phone just to check what has happened the previous night, what did I miss? And unfortunately, I missed the very big event, and it was there on my phone, and I just froze. Sure. And a lot of feelings and emotions ran through me, and in as much as I didn't have a personal relationship with the man, but through our interaction at professional and civic levels, I felt a big part of me has been taken away. So that really hit me. Up until now, it's really difficult to really process the whole thing. It's going to take a long time, I'm sure, for many people, but that's really what happened.
I guess everyone felt a part of him in themselves.
Yes.
What will you remember the late President Hage Geingob as?
A visionary leader. Somebody that was not afraid to charter the uncharted waters. That, for me, I think will always remain in my psyche about the man.
All right. Your final remarks, please, sir?
In this deepest, darkest moment, I think if we have never been united as a country, I think this is the time to really stand together for the memory of the great man and also for the future of this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Well, that was Likukela, an independent economist. Now we will be bringing you